Missouri still has absolutely everything to play for this season. And I'm not just talking about a college football playoff technicality, so I'll explain right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And coming up on the program, going to have a quick injury update on Brady Cook. Not a lot of new information there, but some optimism. I will give you that. So let's talk about that a little later in the show. But first, I want to talk about why everything is still on the table for Missouri to play for this season. First of all, I said I wasn't going to beat you on a technicality, but let's start with that technicality at first. Of course, with two losses here, sitting at 6-2, Missouri technically still has a chance at the college football playoff. As all of you know, if you're an everyday or if you've been listening to this program, I feel like two big-time blowouts on the road basically ended Missouri's chances at the playoff. But if you take a step back, you look at it statistically, heck, even our old pal Bill C over at ESPN.com gives the Tigers still about a 5% chance of making the playoff. And at the very least, no matter what you think of those odds, maybe you think they're dramatically lower than that, closer to 0.1% than they are 5%, hey, fine and dandy. If you're Eli Drinkwitz and the rest of that coaching staff and, of course, the leaders on this football team, then you cannot let that thought creep in for even 1 second. You got to be playing this like you, number one, still are very much in the race for the college football playoff. But again, I was reminded this past weekend watching College Game Day, there's a heck of a lot more to this sport than simply making the playoff and chasing for the national championship. Because number one, these are our guys. At least that's how I'm looking at it, especially in the transfer portal era when you still have guys who have stayed their entire careers at Missouri. Guys like Brady Cook, of course, and of course guys like Luther Burden III as well, and even guys who've transferred in but have embraced the Missouri silliness that is all of this old Mizzou stuff. Christian Williams and a whole mess of other guys out there. Well, speaking of College Game Day, I didn't see Luther Burden's feature this past week until just a couple days ago, and it does remind you, at least it reminds me, that no matter what happens this season or really in Luther Burden's future NFL career here that I'm sure is going to be coming up here next season, to go from East St. Louis, Illinois, where Luther Burden grew up, in just the absolute epicenter, really, of American poverty and crime and all that good stuff, well, all that bad stuff, to go from that to where he is today, that's already just an incredible success story. So I think it's a good idea to take a step back and realize that, especially when you watch this story. And if you love Missouri and you love Columbia, Missouri, a place I've chosen to put down my roots and raise my children and all that good stuff, when you hear Luther Burden say this, talking about going to Missouri, the best decision of my life, I really found a home outside of St. Louis. This is just like my real home. Boy, what a beautiful sentiment, in my opinion. And as a resident of this area, as an alum of the University of Missouri, that's an absolutely beautiful thing to hear. So, first of all, thanks to Luther for sharing that. And, of course, sharing his whole story about his upbringing and his childhood and everything that he had to overcome in his life to get to this point. And really, I think it's probably a good idea to give Luther Burden Jr. a lot of credit here. His father being around and being a strong influence in his life, and of course his mother as well, his entire family unit, all of those sisters and everything else. How could they not be incredibly proud of Luther Burden? And because of that, guess what? As a fan, as an alum of the University of Missouri, I'm really proud of him too. And, I was definitely critical of Luther after the Texas A&M game, his body language in that game. But you know what? A couple days later, I also said, hey, guess what? I'm over it too. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And as I pointed out, when I'm on the golf course, for example, I'm certainly apt to give in to negativity on occasion as well. And it's not good for my game. I know this from experience because when I play with others, even though it's an individual sport, of course, I'm so much more conscious of my fellow players and having a shared experience that I don't usually want to sully that experience for my fellow players by giving into, my negative BS. Now, do I still occasionally fail when there are others around? Of course. But my point is, when I play by myself, I tend to be more selfish and give in to that kind of stuff. Either way, the point is, it's not good for you as an individual. And when you project that type of negativity, it's not good for your teammates or the people around you, even if they're not playing on your team. It's not going to be great for their mindset or their game either. And my thing is, it was just an observation. It wasn't a huge criticism of Luther or saying that he's a bad guy or anything. I think he is a good guy by all accounts, and just, my own sort of vibe metrics on Luther Burden III. He seems like a really nice kid and a good young man. And he's also hyper competitive. So I get it. On the football field occasionally, you're going to get upset and show emotions. All I'm saying is the negative body language, just something to be conscious of. But again, I'm over it. And I'm over that. And I'm over losing to Alabama as well. As ugly as that game was, the first shutout for Missouri in 5 seasons, the first one under Eli Drinkwitz. But you know what? I'm over it. Because every college football game, every Missouri game from my perspective is an opportunity. You don't get that many of these. You get 12 of them guaranteed per year these days. So to me, it's time to flip the script. We're in the middle of a bye week here. It's only, we got a week and a half to go. Am I supposed to just cry in my bathtub for the next 10 days? I don't think so. In fact, instead of doing that, let's go beat Oklahoma. That's what I'd like to do. Heck, let's go take down Arkansas again. We own the Ozark Bowl, baby. We own the Battle Line rivalry. I'm not willing to give that up just yet. And if my wife and I are going to be going to Columbia, South Carolina, I want to see a win. And also, finally, Mississippi State, the Cowbells. Annoying as hell, let's all be honest. And to heck with Stark Vegas and all your self-deprecating humor. As you can tell, I'm struggling a little bit to find reasons to hate Mississippi State. But damn it, those Cowbells are pretty stupid, so that may be enough for me. Regardless, I am absolutely ready, first of all, to beat the Oklahoma Sooners down. I think all of you need to start getting fired up for this game because there's a lot more on the line here than I think people are realizing right now. So let's talk about this huge matchup coming up here with the Sooners in just a little bit. But first, if you don't have tickets to the Missouri-Oklahoma game yet, you know what? I'm going to advise that you wait until the last minute and do it with Gametime, the place to get last-minute tickets to your favorite events. And right now, prices are still pretty high, nearly $150 all-in pricing at Gametime to get in the door. Hey, maybe wait a little while, and those prices, I think, will be quite a bit cheaper the closer you get toward game time here, especially a couple days out. But you know what? If you don't want to play amateur ticket scalper, you just go to Gametime Picks, and they'll give you exactly the best deals out there, filtering out all the nonsense. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime by downloading the Gametime app, creating an account, and using the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. COLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. So while this season so far has not gone how I would have wanted, and obviously that leaves me in pretty good company with the rest of you true sons and daughters out there, I would say. But hey, context always important. At least we're not Oklahoma, who is sitting at 4-4 right now. I'd much rather be Missouri at 6-2 because, well, the rather entitled Oklahoma Sooner fan base is not happy about being 4-4 whatsoever. I can promise you that. So maybe not as much juice in this game as we would have liked, but let's do something to change that. Let's openly provoke the Sooners a little bit, because remember all the smack this past offseason emanating from Norman, Oklahoma, on Twitter and everywhere else on the old interwebs about Missouri basically stealing recruits from the Sooners and what have you. Oh, it's only NIL. That's the only reason that Oklahoma has lost some recruits to Missouri here. Well, I'll just say this. I'll be damned if I want to lose to Oklahoma after they've somehow wiggled their way into our conference. That's right, our conference, the SEC, and let them have bragging rights for the next year over the Tigers. And by the way, we'll have to travel to Norman next season. If the Tigers lose that one, no guarantee the Tigers will play Oklahoma on a regular basis moving forward. This is a huge game, not only for bragging rights, but for recruiting territory as well. Of course, Oklahoma traditionally is up there with the greatest college football programs of all time. This transition to the SEC here, this transition away from Lincoln Riley here a little bit, has not gone incredibly smoothly so far. So if Missouri and the rest of the SEC can continue to stomp down on Oklahoma like the cockroaches that they are, that would go a long way to helping Missouri, not only in bragging rights, but hey, Missouri's going to have a tough time in the future, more than likely, competing with Georgia and Alabama and LSU in terms of recruiting. Simple geography, simple history, all of that stuff, demographics, what have you. Well, if Oklahoma can be more toward the great middle of the SEC instead of that elite upper echelon where Oklahoma is historically, that's going to be a big thing for Missouri competitively as well. So, yes, Missouri beat Oklahoma in 2010. The Sooners currently have bragging rights, won an exciting game, by the way, in Norman in 2011, in my opinion. But for the most part, the last few years, especially on the recruiting trail since then, think about Dorial Green Beckham, originally committed to Oklahoma, flipped to Missouri. Same thing with Luther Burden III, by the way. And, of course, Williams Winery this past offseason. Ah, yes, the Sooners sure felt entitled to him, didn't they? And we stole Caden Green off their offensive line in the portal. It's been a lot of losses against Missouri for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. Of course, all time, Missouri's been dominated by Oklahoma on the football field. But that's all in the past. As for the present and the future, hopefully Missouri can turn this around and maybe make Oklahoma into the redheaded stepchild. And Eli Drinkwitz did speak to reporters on this bye week here recently on Wednesday on Brady Cook's injury. This is the lead here, not a lot of other information. But Drinkwitz said on Brady Cook returning this season, he says, yeah, absolutely. Brady has been in here every day. He's getting treatment and absolutely expecting him back this season. And right now, I have no update that would tell me I don't expect him for today's practice. So that all seems to be very positive for Brady. At first, my worry was then when Missouri said, hey, we had an x-ray down in Tuscaloosa, down at the stadium, and then Missouri rules him out. Well, I immediately worried that there may have been a broken bone in Brady's hand, his throwing hand, by the way, or throwing wrist on his right arm there. That would obviously, with just a few weeks to go left in the season, that probably would have been a season ender. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now. Obviously, there's got to be some concern there to that right arm, wrist, hand area of Brady Cook, but also, of course, that high ankle sprain as well. So Drinkwitz was asked which is more of a concern. Drinkwitz said whole body is what he said. Mentally, physically, everything's just been beat up for the 8 weeks of the season. So we're focused on trying to treat the whole body and getting healthy spirit, soul, mind, body, and all of it. So I think that's Drinkwitz being a little bit humorous there, as he likes to be, giving us a little entertainment and color there. But when he says the whole body, I'm going to take that to literally mean really the high ankle is something that needs to still heal. It's not as though, oh, he's got a hand or wrist injury and suddenly we don't have to worry about that high ankle. The high ankle was always going to be a problem. That's something he's definitely going to have to be getting treatment on a daily basis here, probably for the rest of the season with so little time left here in this 2024 season. As for the wrist and the hand, without knowing exactly what the injury is, that may just call for a lot of rest and rehab and icing. Who knows? There's a lot of different techniques in modern medicine that have come a long way because of the competitiveness of sports. So it sounds pretty good that Brady will return at some point this season. Whether or not that's the Oklahoma game, though, that is very much up for debate. Continuing here, Drinkwitz, I'll just give you the rest of his words here about Cook specifically. He just says, working as hard as we can, our training room, MU Healthcare, our doctors, all working as hard as they possibly can to get everybody healthy and back. And we're being very smart in how we practice this week. Of course, this being a bye week for the Tigers. Drinkwitz finishes here. SEC protocols have an injury report that's released on Wednesday evening, and I look forward to filling it out and giving everybody the information then. I don't plan on updating any injury information, which would be a competitive advantage to another team until then. Now, I have to be honest, I'm a little confused here if Drinkwitz by Wednesday evening, did he mean this evening? I assumed he meant a week from today, since the Tigers don't have an opponent this week. I don't think they have to. I don't think injury protocols for within conference here. This is all new stuff, so I'm kind of figuring it out on the fly here. But I don't believe that actually comes into play here with the Tigers on a bye week. So seems like we're not going to get a whole lot more information on Cook for another week or so. Will he play against Oklahoma? Frankly, your guess is as good as mine, but the lead here is that Drinkwitz sounds very optimistic that Cook should not be done for the season. I'd say regardless of who plays quarterback against Oklahoma here in about a week and a half, the Tigers better find some sort of offensive identity here during the bye week. And as much of an injury question as Brady Cook is, I think Nate Noel, just in terms of finding an identity for Missouri, one that is sustainable and can be effective for the rest of the 4 weeks of the season here, I think he's a big part of that. Missouri, a lot of its offense, its base offense is predicated around that outside zone play, and, well, that just hasn't been the bread and butter without Noel as much as it was last season with Cody Schrader in the backfield. That's one thing you've seen. Schrader, maybe his biggest skill of all was just incredible durability. No offense to Nate Noel whatsoever. That's just a credit to Cody Schrader for being just an unbelievable workhorse. And earlier in the program, I made a quick mention of how Missouri is probably always going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit. As far as we can tell, I think the future is likely here that a lot of Missouri's competitors, for example, the Georgia Bulldogs, are always going to have a huge recruiting advantage locally over Missouri. So this idea that, hey, if Missouri just locks down the borders, they'll be fine. I'm going to have to challenge that particular thought pretty strongly with a clear example coming up here after these quick words. Now, while Missouri's 2025 football recruiting class is neither finished nor official at this point, well, it's not too early for 2026 recruiting. And there's one young man that made me start thinking about something. Jordan Edmonds, a guy out of Marietta, Georgia, a cornerback that Missouri is on to for 2026. Well, I was looking at this young man's rankings. He's the sixth highest ranked recruit in Georgia, according to 24/7 Sports. But that makes him he's also the 51st ranked player in the country. So that's pretty darn good for being the sixth best player in a state. So that got me thinking. He's also, by the way, the sixth best corner. So the sixth best player at his position nationally as well. He's also at 6'3", 170, definitely fits the lanky, taller cornerback mold that Drinkwitz has preferred for his entire recruiting tenure here at Missouri. But it did get me thinking, where does the sixth best player in Missouri rank nationally? Or how about even the sixth best player in the great state of Massachusetts? Yes, I will never get tired of that particular quote. So again, let's set the baseline here. Jordan Edmonds, a guy Missouri's recruiting, sixth best player in Georgia, 51st in the country. Well, for this same 2026 class, well, Missouri's got a definite blue chipper. Jackson Cantwell, son of Missouri great shot putter Christian Cantwell and silver medalist in 2008 at shot put. Well, his son, Jackson, the number one player in Missouri, well, he's the number 4 ranked player nationally. So truly, he's somebody that everybody in the country is going to want, including the Georgia Bulldogs, the aforementioned Georgia Bulldogs, who some people think is Missouri's biggest competition for Cantwell. Now, the second best player in Missouri is a kid named DeZephan Walker. He is only 183rd nationally, however. Again, the sixth best player in Georgia is 51st nationally. The second best player in Missouri, 183. By the way, in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not a single player is rated nationally in the top 250 over at 24/7 Sports. So to give you an idea of not only the challenges that Missouri is going to face in terms of recruiting, think how bad it is for Boston College. Now you understand why Eli Drinkwitz was not super amused at taking that road trip in 2021. Imagine what he really thought about the 2024 trip to Amherst if he would have not learned his lesson on sort of shooting himself in the foot there with his mouth. But regardless, just thought that was an interesting note to go out on there. Obviously, Missouri's doing a heck of a lot better than a lot of states, but they're always going to struggle to keep up with Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi, Texas. That's just the way it is. And a lot of those states I just ranked, well, that's SEC country, isn't it? So if you're Eli Drinkwitz or any Missouri coach in the future, you've got your work cut out for you. So anytime Missouri is finishing in the top 15 to top 20, 25 or so, that's really a win. It just is. Unless Missouri starts winning a whole lot more games in the future. The old chicken or the egg thing, well, we'll just have to hopefully we'll find out the answer to that when Missouri starts winning some championships. But until then, thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day. And for your second listen, check out my guy, Chris Gordy, over at Locked On SEC. You'll find Locked On SEC, of course, on YouTube and wherever you get audio podcasts as well. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.